Recording in progress.
Tuesday, the 23rd.
Did you guys get your wine?
Facility master plan.
That's right. I need to go lunch.
Good evening. I will now call the Auburn study session meeting for Monday, March 23rd, 2026 to order. Tonight's study session meeting will be held both in person and virtually. Hannah, can you please call roll?
Deputy Mayor Tracy Taylor.
Here.
Councilmember Ammer.
Here.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Here.
Councilmember Lott.
Here.
Councilmember Rakes.
Here.
Councilmember Sturgis.
Here.
Councilmember Clinton Taylor.
Here.
Thank you. Hannah, any agenda modifications tonight?
No, Chair.
Fabulous, thank you. So tonight we have two presentations on the agenda. First one is the facility master plan, police updated, the update provided by Director Galp and Chief Collier.
All right, so good evening, Deputy Mayor, Council. So as Deputy Mayor alluded to, and we talked a little bit about at the leadership retreat, we were going to come back and talk a little bit more about where we're at with the facility master plan and specifically talk a little bit more about the police master plan study in that. So that's what we're here tonight to do. But before we jump into that, since I know we have some council members that weren't involved in the previous facility master plan, we were going to do just a really quick overview of kind of what the facility master plan is. And then I'm going to have our team introduce themselves for the going over the police study. So the facility master plan was a project that we started back in 2019 and worked on through 2021. This was a multi-department study that was conducted to look at all of the city's facilities that house staff, if you will. So the city hall, the annex, the maintenance and operation shops, and the justice center, to look and see, did we have issues with those facilities, what was needed to update those facilities, maintain those facilities, and then also what was needed for growth for the city into the future. So in 2021, the council adopted the results of that facility master plan through resolution 5595. And that plan identified needs for City Hall and the City Hall Annex, for the parks maintenance and operations, for public works maintenance operations, and police. The plan also identified that there was a need for the city to invest in ongoing facility maintenance work for all of its facilities around the city. So those original findings in that plan as it related to police was that renovating the existing Justice Center to meet police's growth needs was not a 50-year solution. It was just not big enough to house the needs, the space needs that was identified in that plan. And that we identified that we wanted to look for a potential location either near Les Cove Park or in the downtown was the preferred locations. The maintenance and operations for M&O for both public works and for parks, basically that property was also identified that it was not quite large enough for everything that we needed to do there. So we need to utilize some other property that we have for some of the storage facilities that we need for both Parks and Public Works' operations. And that some updating was needed because we were definitely out of space for both of those facilities for the size the teams have grown to and are expected to grow to as we move into the future. For the administrative, so this would be City Hall Annex, the analysis on that basically identified that there was a very small amount of need for additional space within those facilities, and that overall those conditions were within the expectation for where they're at in their life of service. So they were not the priority goal for what needed to be done for heavy investment into the future. So the final recommendations of the plan identified a couple of different things. First, for police, it identified that we wanted to identify that new location for a future police headquarters. But we couldn't, at that time, the council was not looking to replace the whole headquarters at once, so they wanted to look at doing a portion of that. So what was decided in that study was that we looked at replacing the evidence facilities that police had at a new location that could then be used in the future to actually build the rest of the future headquarters. For the maintenance and operations, there was significant investment needed to build additional crew space, building space at our current M&O facilities for Public Works, as well as for Parks M&O at their current facilities at both the GSA location as well as at Game Farm Park and at Jacobson Tree Farm Park, with the expansion of that park coming in the future. For administration, again, it was a very small investment, which was to create, I think, less than 5% of the space that needed to grow to meet the overall maintenance or the overall growth needs for that. And then for the maintenance piece of it, the program identified that spending for the facilities that we had at that time really should be closer to about $1 million a year. I think at that time it was less than $100,000 a year that we spend on maintenance of facilities. And so that was something that they had proposed, stepping in, increasing that expenditure by 2036 to get the city to that $1 million a year in investment in the facilities we have to maintain the facilities that we have. So what have we done since that study? So in the 25-26 budget, we included adopting basically bonding out for up to $39.1 million for doing the facility improvements for that evidence facility for police, as well as for the Parks M&O and for the Public Works M&O improvements. That budget includes the ongoing debt service payments for issuing bonds for the improvement work. The intent was the improvements would be completed over a 6-year period, and that in this budget cycle, we would be beginning those initial design steps of the program. It included in the 25-26 budget, the council did allocate additional $250,000 annually towards facility maintenance needs. So that's a first step towards growing that fund for meeting those ongoing maintenance needs and supporting investing in the facilities we have to maintain them. And then in addition to that, something that wasn't considered in the facility master plan was council did adopt the 0.1% sales tax for public safety, which takes effect here in a week. So that has been what was included in the budget, what we've actually done as well. So since that time, the city purchased property down at the intersection of 12th Street Southeast and Auburn Way South with the intent of that being a potential site for a future police headquarters. We've completed a renovation of the lobby over in the annex building on the second floor, which is basically creating that additional space necessary for growth within the city for the City Hall and City Hall Annex area. We've got under construction right now the first expansion of our Public Works fleet facility. So that was the expansion of the shops for fleet so that we could manage the police take-home vehicle program. And that's nearly complete through its construction. And then we started doing that master plan development. So part of the facility master plan recommendation was that we take a deeper dive into police to really get a feel for exactly what space they needed and how that needed to be configured so that when we found a site to place that new headquarters on, we could figure out, is it going to fit in that site and how would it fit in that site? So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And then in addition, later on this year, we'll also talk about both parks and public works maintenance facilities as we are looking at those similar to what we've done with police. It's been 6 years, 5 years, 6 years since we did the facility master plan, so we need to take another quick look at that, make sure, does that make sense still? Do we need to make some changes or make some consideration with how we spend those funds before we start moving into that heavy design process? So before we jump into the discussion with the consultant tonight, any questions on that history?
Any questions? Thank you for that.
All right, and so I'm going to hand it over to Bernie. You want to introduce yourselves?
Good evening, council members. I'm Bernie O'Donnell. I'm president of Rock Project Management and headquartered in Renton. And we are been charged with doing the master planning for the Justice Center, and in this particular case, it's the headquarters of the police department. I'm the program manager for the master planning, and this is...
I'm Adam Wilson, also with Rock Project Management Services, working alongside Bernie on this police master plan.
So what we want to walk through with you tonight is the progress timeline of the master plan, where we've been, what we've been doing since October of last year. Validate the existing assumptions that were made back on the citywide facilities plan as it relates to the assumptions that were made related to the police department and headquarters. Validating the existing assumptions that were made in there. Are they still valid from 2021 to now 2025 in the last 5 years, or 2026? Conducting a space needs assessment in addition to looking at the physical conditions of the buildings. We are looking at what are the space needs that the department needs to run their program. Test fitting of city-owned property, that's that 12th Avenue and 12th Avenue Southeast and Auburn Way South site. And then the next steps where we're at with community outreach and engagement, and then the further steps along the way. So the timeline, October through November, we've been validating that 2021 overall facilities plan as it relates to the police headquarters. And validating that the conditions of the existing Justice Center, what's the physical condition of this aging facility, and the conditions that are needed to meet the needs of the city there. From November to January, we then we conducted space needs assessments. We met with all of the individual staff members, the different groups within the police department, and what are their needs? Major crimes, or the detectives, or patrol group, what are their specific needs for space, and how do they need to be interacting with the other groups there. Since January, we've been doing a test fit of the 12th Street site. And we'll get more into that as we move on. So the first order of business was to validate that 2021 the recommendations, conduct the facilities condition assessments of the existing Justice Center. We also looked at the court space too, but our real focus was on the headquarters space for the police department. Overall, that third bullet point is the main point. The existing Justice Center is in overall fair condition. However, it does not meet the needs of a modern police department for a city of this size. Future improvements really need to address how the arrangement works within the department for space for some efficiencies long term. Okay. So we looked at almost 1,500 items, components, whether it's the building systems, the finishes, the equipment in the buildings, everything from the mechanical system, the electrical system, the lighting, the security, as you can imagine. And the bulk of the facility items that we assessed are in fair condition. It's the physical condition is fair, whether it meets the needs of the police department's a whole nother story. But we took a deep dive into it, and overall, as a city-owned facility, it's in reasonably good shape. As you may know, it was a grocery store back in the 40s, right? And it's been adapted over time. Yeah. So, but as a police department, it's not really meeting the needs that we would expect. Okay. So after assessing the physical condition. The next was to understand how the police department operates and the groups within the police department and who needs to talk to whom needs to be next to whom, how much space do they need. And this graphic really shows that interaction. As you can imagine, it's a complex understanding of how the police department and all of the different units within the police department interact with one another. But it really helped to inform us on what spaces are needed and how it needs to be configured so that we have an understanding on physical space and requirements there. So this slide is difficult to read, but the first column is the new square footage that we arrived at by doing this space needs assessment. It's roughly 46,000 square feet. If you look at the existing Justice Center, they have floors 1, 2, 3, and then they have a separate evidence storage annex facility. The total square footage that they have right now existing is just shy of 28,000. For a variance of 17, almost 18,000 square feet shy of what they need right now. And so the bulk of that is the Health and Wellness Center. The Health and Wellness, the gymnasium, the showers, lockers, all of that they're just simply out of space for today's standards. There is a savings on the common space because it's arranged pretty wonky, for lack of other technical terms. It's not very efficient in how they use their space. And so there's actually an ability to have some savings in the economy of how things are arranged there. This is more of a graphic that shows how the spaces are sized and how they might be arranged on two particular floors. If it was a two-story building, a 46,000 square foot facility. What we showed there here in the orange, if you look at that, it's we broke out the health and wellness program that could be a standalone facility or wing to a building that doesn't necessarily have the same requirements that maybe the detectives or major crimes or some of the others that might have a higher security level, that is something that could be done separate from the overall headquarters itself. So that's what this is showing here. We also looked at the space needs as it relates to parking. And so, again, I apologize for the picture itself. We're trying to get a lot of information on one slide, but the aerial there shows the existing Justice Center and all of the parking spaces around it that add up to a total of 165 parking stalls. And the difference between the new and the existing is we think there's actually about a need of about 129 parking stalls. The 165 also represents the court operations and the visitor parking requirements there, so there's a reduction in the need for parking. The total parking space that would be needed on a new site would be just over an acre, 1.08 acres, versus 1.5 acres of the existing that's currently being used. So the next step we took on was test fitting the actual site, the 12th Street. 12th Street is at the bottom of that photo, 12th Street Southeast, and the intersection of that and Auburn Way South. If you guys are familiar with where that's at, it's across from, Auburn Way South from Les Grove Park. What we're showing in this graphic is a two-story building, the white box, that adds up to 46,000 square feet. And there's still room for future building expansion, which is the orange or the yellow. The other is showing a setback for landscaping, and then also this is a P1 zoned area, and it requires a 15% open space landscape buffer. And then you can see that there's secured parking and then public parking and a sense of a plaza to create a sense of space there. Let's see, yeah, so that's that. So this graphic, I just want to say out front that we are not trying to show any architecture. We didn't want to get into a conversation of, hey, I really like this style versus that style. That's for the design team to do at some point. We do have design principles that we want it to be focused on community and fitting in with the neighborhood and things like that. So if you look at this and say, that's just a box and I don't like that, that wasn't the purpose of this. This is really a test fit of how can we make it fit onto the site, a two-story building, and and with the appropriate setbacks and the appropriate number of parking stalls. So you can see that we're identifying locations that is secured parking for the employees and the police fleet vehicles versus the public, more accessible visitor parking. And so this is one where we're showing it's fronting onto Auburn Way South, more of a commercial corridor. This one is another option where we're showing potentially a phased project if the funding wasn't available right away, and that we had to break out one chunk first, that we might be able to do what is that standalone facility, which might be the health and wellness facility, could be built. It would allow a lot of the operations of the health and wellness program to maybe move down there as a standalone facility. And then when additional funding is available, you could do the remaining part of the headquarters. Or you could build it all at once. And so we're showing those as two separate functions, two potential different phases. This fronts onto 12th Street Southeast. The idea is that any responding vehicles, police vehicles, the fleet comes out to the middle of the street and they can come out to a controlled intersection to go respond, either going west, and that's what C Street, and then or going east and getting onto Auburn Way South and going north or south from there. And then the visitor parking could be either out front here or it could be behind and fronting onto Auburn Way South. So there's a lot of different varieties of how we can configure the facilities. At the end of the day, the buildings fit, the space fits on this property just fine. So those are the two options you can see that we've looked at. There's variations on those. We could go technically 1 story higher, and that based on the zoning, and that might skinny up the building though at 46,000 square feet, so roughly 15,500 square feet per floor. Could skinny it up and allow further expansion in the future if you needed to do that. That's something, but it's not as efficient as far as the interaction of all of the different spaces. This slide is intended to really talk about community outreach and engagement. And so as we're looking at the space needs, and yes, it fits, there are some guiding principles that we want the design team, which would be the next stage as the design team starts really fiddling with the design. And there's some key principles that we've worked with the department leadership and Ingrid on, and that is that public and secure zones and controlled access is really understood so that there's good access to the public. It feels inviting, but at the same time, there's a lot of security and access control within a headquarters that's essential. Functionality and flexibility of a robust, reliable building systems, expanding programs, and future technologies. There's the drone program that's evolving. There's other technologies such as a major crime, real-time crime lab, stuff like that, that's emerging new technologies. We want to make sure that the design thinks about how the police operate in the future. Number 3 is a human-centered design that it reflects the community's character, that it fits in. Headquarters for police is going to be around for a long time. It needs to have the right balance of security and structure and solidness, but at the same time, it also needs to be responsive to the character of the neighborhood. And then sustainable design that integrates green design principles, reduces the long-term maintenance costs, and improves energy efficiency, all fundamentals on any kind of public facility that would be constructed. Okay. Adam, I don't want to do all the talking. I'll let you jump in if you want to talk about next steps.
Yeah, we've already stated most of it, but right now where we are, we've done, the space needs analyzing, we've done the site assessment. Now, next step would be, as Bernie mentioned, to bring on procure a design team, bring them on board, walk them through all the principles that we've established that need to be met, as well as the site parameters will be verified. And, these are just a couple examples too. There's some other possibilities we've explored, and in addition to coming and going for the, the police department, we're looking at, like Bernie was mentioning, out on 12th Street there. But there's other options where, with the design. This just kind of outlines, I think, the needs, the digging we've been doing just to see what will work, what outlines. The space needs they require, this is a pretty good sized building, but, we feel very comfortable about it, and we're anxiously looking to proceed to the next step and procure a design team and get this in motion. So, really excited about it.
Yeah, so the next steps is after this meeting and receiving any feedback that you have is to make sure that there's a intentional outreach to the community and get their input. And so we have a website that would go out there to the public We are in the process of validating the budget and the schedule for all of the design options. Right now, we're seeing that the numbers work just fine. And then finalizing the layout concepts, continuing to scrub a little bit more. And then by the end of April, the expectation is that we have a final plan to present to you. That's where we're at.
Council, any questions? Councilmember Baldwin.
Yeah, one of the things I'm curious about that is maybe not in here, but would be related to facilities master plan as a whole, if we're moving in this direction, is continued use of the existing Justice Center, and how does that fit in? And this is probably not for you gentlemen, but for our organization. How does that fit in with the plans to, stand up our municipal courts and how we're going to be using that space? Because what I don't think is answered yet is, if we're looking at this transition, is there any cost in the interim to make sure that we can accommodate the stand-up of the new municipal courts? And does that come into effect with the new building, right? Are we planning to keep that in perpetuity at the current Justice Center? Do we need to do any retrofitting to accommodate those changes? Is that the best use of that facility going forward? And I don't know that we've had any of those conversations yet. And so that's something that I feel like does need to be answered to be able to support what's happening here, because both pieces go together. I'm also curious, well, I'll stop there with that first part.
So our initial direction on this is that we are assuming that courts is staying where courts is, and that court would continue using the space that they are currently in at a minimum. So obviously, if the city council decides to move forward with building a full police headquarters, which is a budget decision that this group needs to make, probably in the 27-28 budget process, whether that's something that you want to proceed and do a full headquarters or not. If you do, then I think that existing Justice Center still stays a Justice Center in that. I think it allows for the municipal court, as it comes on board and it starts to develop, it allows them the growth capability that they need for the operations for that municipal court. And I think at the same time, in all of this planning, I believe that we are still looking at potentially, if we focus on the health and wellness piece, which is different from what we were analyzing back in 2021 and 2020, that has definitely grown as an emphasis area for police since that initial plan was done. So one of the things we discussed was, does it make sense to leave the current evidence building where it's currently at and use that for long-term evidence storage, and focus more on, if we did a partial phase construction, you heard Bernie mention it a little bit, do we focus on that health and wellness piece, which doesn't then segregate police's operations and how they do that work. So I think there's lots of different things that can be done with that property. I think making a decision one way or the other about what we're doing with police is probably the first step in that. As far as the transition to municipal court at the end of this year, again, the assumption has always been that municipal court will use the same space that the current district court is using. And my understanding is district court has had more staff in there than what they needed to actually run the courts for our use. And so there should be additional space there for that municipal court to be able to operate initially.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that that was part of the study as far as looking at the overall condition of the existing building, which is still in very fair condition. And so it's a city-owned building right now. And any expansion of the court could be incorporated, would come in at a later date. You can study that. So.
Council, any other questions? Councilmember Sturgis?
I have a couple clarifying questions. So my first one is, for the police headquarters master plan, and then showing the two separate, the building and then the wellness center, is that, so those, as you're explaining it, those are two separate projects? It wouldn't all be in the one project? If we approve to move forward,
So
saying, yes, we want to build.
It depends
Okay.
upon what the council decides to do. So right now, in the facility master plan with the bonding that we've approved, you have approved about $7 million to go towards building something for police. So we can choose to move forward and build something for police that's within that $7 million, and that is part of the marching orders that we've given to the consultant in trying to figure out the costs, is what makes sense for that $7 million piece. If that was the only thing we went forward with, which is what is already budgeted, what would that be and what makes sense for police in the operations? if council in the budgeting process decides you want to take that 0.1% sales tax for public safety and use that to leverage for future bonding and actually move forward with building a full police headquarters replacement, then I think we would look at doing that all at once. So we would take what we need for the police headquarters plus that 7 million and do that as one program.
Okay, awesome.
Councilmember Amer?
So, because I have been volunteer with the police department, I think 13 years, so I know the department, and I know like when we build it, it's too small, it's not efficient for the staff, it's hard. So in my heart, it's this is not about want something, but we want to make sure that we have facility fit the growth we have today. So if we have the money, that's me personally, I think we should start building the headquarters. We want to recruit people. I will not work in place whereas we have limited 2 bathroom or 1 locker. So that's me. It's the size, the small, even the gym when there was in the 2nd floor, like I don't want to go in details. But the city really need to have a new headquarters. We really need it. So depending on the money, that's how I feel.
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yeah, with regard to tonight's presentation, I think the exciting thing is that I think we've at least answered for the site that we've purchased, can it accommodate the needs that have been identified? And I think what I'm seeing in materials presented is a yes, which is a very, very positive thing. I think from a validating budget question, and again, this may be, trying not to operate in a vacuum just with police headquarters, but until we have a new municipal judge who can weigh in on what is identified as needs for municipal court, I think it may be hard to commit to a particular path, and that's not saying that we don't have need. I acknowledge that there's need, but I also think we have to look at, and I would like to maybe hear deeper conversation from Director Thomas with regards to how we could utilize budget. The concern that I have right now, looking outside Auburn, looking just at the economy, is we're seeing oil prices spiking, we're seeing cost of things going up. Those are inflationary pressures. And even if we have 7 million authorized from a budgeting authority, I would be curious to have more conversation about the 0.1% sales tax and how that can be utilized, not only potentially for supporting new headquarters, but also what other programs for crime reduction would be appropriate to that, or different types of uses to address criminal activity within the community. And so are you in your step for validating budget and schedule? Who will you be working with in that conversation?
So we have been working with Jamie on what an overall budget could look like for a police headquarters, and we are working within that number that Jamie has provided for in that consideration for this effort. Again, the discussion about whether or not this is something that council wants to budget or not, that's a discussion for later on in the budget process. As we refine those numbers, we'll be providing that information to the council for consideration in the 27-28 budget. But that's a separate discussion from the discussion here, and I think at that point in time, hopefully we'll have a judge at that point that can weigh in on some of the municipal court questions that I know council has on that side of it. Again, we're looking at it from the standpoint that district court currently operates in the space that's there. Municipal court should utilize less staff than the district court has been using, therefore they should be able to fit, at least initially, in what is there and be able to operate out of the space that they have.
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yeah, I think my concerns are not so much for can they work in the existing space, but there are other costs. Picking the path to bring municipal courts back into Auburn was the most expensive option out of the options that had been considered by council. And I think we still have yet to see how that's going to manifest at the end of the day with actuals once we're purchasing the software to do case management, once we've figured out the full staffing that's going to be required in the coming years. And so I think there are a lot of unknowns there. For this effort, again, I would like to have a better understanding of how we're doing on our sales tax revenue, because everything that I've seen and heard in the community is that people are tightening belts and they're not spending as much. So apart from, hey, let's go do more bonds, is our community in a place where people can afford that right now? Is that something that we can absorb as a city if we're going to see other factors coming into play that may be affecting our budget and our finances in the coming years? Again, not saying I don't think this is a need that we have, but I think we have to just be very mindful of what we may be going back to our community for with projects that we have coming in the next few years. So not just the next 2 years, but within the next 6.
Sure, and again, you're jumping into budget questions that aren't necessarily the intent of this presentation, so not necessarily not good questions to be asking,
Right.
but probably for a little bit later in the overall process.
Right. And I'm bringing them up as study sessions so my council members can hear them within quorum, so our mayor can hear them, so staff are aware that if not answered tonight, which I don't expect you gentlemen to answer, that people are not surprised as they surface. So.
Councilmember Sturgis.
Thank you. I did make a quick note for our upcoming SFA to make sure to have that as an agenda item for us to be able to spend time with Chief Collier on. We do have our wellness program manager attending to give us an update too of the work that he's done to work with the department in informing a lot of this from the staff side. So we'll definitely bring back more information in the coming months. And a part of that takes into account the court and the community court with the justice or in the existing justice department. So as you guys are in like you said, the next phase is really important is the community outreach and engagement. And then I know that through this process, it sounds like you've really worked a lot with meeting with our police department and our folks in the department and with Angel, et cetera. What will that community outreach and engagement look like? What is the community's opportunity to participate or give feedback? What kind of feedback are you looking for? And then do you continue to engage with the police department as well during that process so that they can hear community feedback? How does that kind of look over the next next steps?
So I can probably start with that and then you guys can add on where you need to. So our intent is we're going to do something similar to what we've done for some of our traffic calming programs where we've done kind of an online virtual open house type thing where they can post questions and comments and information on there. So we're building that website right now for that kind of that interactive, give us your feedback, give us your questions. Right now, it's really more focused on what are their questions and concerns with this particular location so that we can make sure as we actually move into a design process later on, that we're addressing what those concerns and questions might be, and also dispelling some of the concerns and myths that might be coming out of the public for having a police station going into a neighborhood area, right? So I think it's kind of twofold in just trying to give them the information. Again, we don't want the public walking away thinking it's a specific looking building or anything like that because we're not at that design level at this point in time. So it's going to be the images that you see on the screen that are on that website with kind of give us your feedback and what are your questions, what are your concerns and issues in there. And so that's what we're looking at doing, right? So.
I just say, working with the IT department at the city has been wonderful, and we'll be able to put together this, online virtual open house type of thing where we're inviting questions and responding, and then and we've been trying to anticipate what some of those questions are already, such as is there a holding cell, a miniature jail there? The answer is no. Put people at their minds at ease a little bit as soon as we can by getting onto that website and seeing all that information.
Awesome.
I'd like to jump in really quick and on the community engagement piece too. I think, and I'd like to suggest possibly meeting our people and meeting our residents where they are too. Online doesn't always work for everybody, and then being able to have that touch point with a person to hear their concerns and their thoughts and ideas, I think that's a piece that's missing here that I would like to suggest instead of just a strictly online piece.
We're totally open to that. We would be happy to do that. Have a plate of cookies and have some boards up and invite people in and have them ask questions in person. We're happy to do that.
And I would add that this is not the only time that you'll be doing public outreach in this process. So if we were moving forward, whether it would be with the smaller building or whether it be the whole thing, there would be a whole design process that would bring a different level of public engagement into the actual design piece. This is very preliminary in just more citing the location than it is really designing out the specifics of the building itself. So there's definitely going to be some of that outreach that happens. throughout a design process when we go into the next phases.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Lott.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask one of those bad budget questions, which is the validating budget in here for next steps and schedule for all options. Are all options gonna be brought in front of the city council? Or is the city council just gonna see the final plans that are picked?
So I would say that what we're doing for validating the budget, so similar to the previous question, we're working within that 7 million for what a first phase would be, and we're working within the number that Jamie has provided for what could that 0.1% bond capability, that sales tax capability, what could that bonding capability be for the city? And we'll be looking at what are those options, what do those look like? Again, we're not doing the detailed design for it, so that's really the two options that we're looking at, where we're trying to make sure is, can what we need to build here for the size that it is fit within that larger budget amount or not? That's really the test fit. The details of what does it look like, what are we doing with the detail of it, that would be in a later design piece after the council's decided, do we want to just move forward with the current phase plan that we have, or do we move forward with a full piece? So that would be what would be part of the budget process later this year.
Councilmember Sturgis.
I think you can tell we have I don't want to speak on behalf of all council, but most of us are very excited and passionate about this topic and in huge support of being able to build a new headquarters, et cetera. So, but I just want to be crystal clear in my understanding when I walk out of here tonight. So tonight's objective is that we have approved the land, and then we have decked 7 million aside in budget. We then went through this study to identify what were the needs. And then now this is saying, yes, we can build where we have the land, it can work. And then over the next several months or however long, we'll be getting additional information of what possibilities there are. The community engagement piece is getting to have the community be heard that a police department's gonna be in your neighborhood, and what are potential concerns, et cetera. So I just wanna make sure I'm totally understanding.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's really about, can it fit on there, and what is the size, and what is that overall cost, that conceptual cost to fit what police needs for the space and the arrangement that they would need on how that building lays out and how it can work together to meet their operational needs. That's really the step we're doing here. If the council wants to move forward with full build or the phase build, that's a discussion for that budget process, which will start summertime with the council.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yeah, first I would add that I would agree with Deputy Mayor Taylor that I think having an in-person component at every stage gate for outreach and engagement is critical. So agree on that. And then I'm also curious for the stakeholder groups that you engaged, looking at the different departments that were identified for the space needs assessment, for those different units. What I didn't necessarily see incorporated on here was, and maybe this is a question because I've known Councilmember Ammer has been a volunteer for so long, is I didn't see any space that seemed earmarked or identified for either like the volunteer and academy programs or like the police advisory committee or those groups that are sort of civilian adjacent with PD and working with PD that I would typically expect if we're taking on this sort of thing that we might have, a little corner. So I don't know if that has been discussed or covered.
So those groups mostly work out of admin services.
Okay.
So it's taken into that. When we talked about meeting space, it's a concept. Could it double, depending on how you set up the building, where you could hold citizen meetings in the same room that we use, on other days for a training room. It's just the concepts are there on how to do it. And so they fall under a separate section. I think earlier in the slide when they talked about square footage, there are meeting rooms that were set up. Various things, so the health and wellness has some of the training and meeting rooms. I believe you've been to our facility right now. We have our training room does, I think, triple duty right now, where we have in-service training there. We bring in Citizens Academy meetings there. We've had other outside citizen groups come there, and it's also our defensive tactics training room. So we have mats. And so we really looked at, okay, we would like some type of training room that you don't have to, throw mats down and have that constant setting up and taking down the room. So that's all incorporated under kind of the admin services and the health and wellness square footage. And some of that accounts for that additional, that large chunk where it's the 10,000, almost 11,000 square foot.
I would just add that these numbers, there's a lot of data behind these numbers where we looked at what is the size of a workstation, and you have 4 different shifts around the clock. Who gets to share that workstation? Who needs a workstation? Who needs a fixed office? We've gone through all of that math to arrive at these numbers to make sure that we've got plenty of space coverage so that nobody's looking for a place to sit. There's ample space there.
Councilmember Ammer?
Thanks to Councilmember Bowling. I saw like they have a training specific room and three conference room. That's amazing. When the chief said, when they have a training, sometimes when we were volunteer, they will have a training, 2 days training, then you have to remove everything, put it back, would be amazing. For you guys to have a specific training room, then maybe in future we will have like training for women, classes, events, because they will have meetings.
Council, any more questions? Councilmember Taylor?
Thank you, Deborah. Just a comment. Thank you for the presentation tonight, because when we initially was having these conversations, it was looking at, we didn't even know what could fit on there, right? And so now just moving into this next step of like what the possibilities of that could look like, and it could be done in 1 phase or 2 phases, and having options and being able to see what that space, how that space could be utilized is really helpful. And so, yeah, obviously there's a lot more conversations that need to happen, but just today, just for this portion of it, knowing that we could put something there and what that could potentially look like, and it could meet the needs of what the department has right now and potentially in the future, is I like what you said about this isn't just about a building that's there for a few years. This is something that'll probably be there long after a lot of us probably. So that's good. And I like the fact that you showed us the different phases also of how that could look if we wanted to go a different route with that. So thank you for the presentation. That was really helpful tonight.
Thank you.
Council, any more questions? Councilmember Baldwin?
Thank you. For, looks like maybe page 9, the findings of condition assessment. You had, iterated a couple times that the building overall for the current one is in fair condition. But I do see some things on here indicating poor, very poor, and not applicable. Can you give me kind of a rough concept of what's happening in those areas?
You want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, the existing structure, I mean, there was a significant renovation, structural upgrade provided in 2003. The building structure is pretty sound. I mean, when we say the building's in fair condition, for the most part, it's the building enclosure, the structure and the enclosure. The parts that are really fair and towards some of the poorer, like Bernie had mentioned, some of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, up on the rooftop, there's some big air handling mechanical equipment that is about at the end of its life. And those are some pretty substantial costing. So overall, again, that's how we really come to the fairs. A lot of the finishes, for the most part, need to be updated. Just some older systems, if you will. But, again, like you mentioned, the actual structure, that can very well be utilized. I mean, finishes we can clean up and basically just have the good structure, the enclosure, and we just have to retrofit the inside with the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems. So, I mean, there's a lot of options for that existing building. It's in good condition.
Councilmember Baldwin?
Thank you. That's helpful to know. I appreciate that. And I do think with how it's being used for PD it's close quarters. I've done the tour, I've seen it. When we talk about the assessment of fair, was there anything in your study that looked at time frame as far as does fair become poor within a certain time frame. You know, we've been looking at expanding our police force. We're going to be having more people in the space than I think we've ever had potentially before. Is there a tipping point where utilization would shift from fair to something different?
I would say, yes, that's a good question, and it's very true that there are some things that are fair but on the borderline of becoming poor, and it's going to increase. There's a lot of maintenance costs to keep it fair and from becoming poor, and so things like the mechanical system or a lot of the finishes that just simply get worn because it's a 24/7 facility for the most part, and it just gets continued. It's tired. The finishes are tired. The painting, you know, the all of the corners of the walls, the ceiling tile, the efficiency of the lighting, you know, the security system, all of that, it's just taken everything's just getting worn out from being used continuously. So, not to mention the furnishings and all that, and then the fact that they're in tight spaces, it's just puts that much more of a burden on the condition of the spaces.
And I would add to that the condition assessment did actually identify kind of what is some of that typical maintenance that needs to be done on the building and the different facilities and systems that are there, as well as some of the preventative maintenance that needs to be done for those that we have provided with our facility staff for them to be able to utilize that in looking at what's needed for that building in the short term.
Yeah, I just add on that as part of doing the condition assessment, it's easy. We now have an inventory of all of the building systems, all of the finishes, you know, the type of flooring that's there. So it was easy for us to put a schedule together and an actual budget together for maintaining and properly maintaining and operating the facilities to a preventative maintenance standard. So we have all that information there, and we provided that to the facilities group.
Yeah, one thing I would just add, like, if you're asking about additional staff and utilization right now, one of the things, we have no more space in our men's locker room. Anybody with an office, we had to purchase a standalone wardrobe. So they actually keep their workout clothes, extra uniforms in their office. We have to change in our offices or, you know, carry your stuff back and forth. So we are right now, without adding more staff, we are out of space in the men's locker room.
I do just have one comment based on that, because and obviously it's only been the last 3 years of my learning, but I think something that we as a city should be so proud of is that our city team takes amazing care of what we have, no matter how old it is. So I would just say for each of us as council, it'd be really important to not get, don't trust just the percentage, because I bet you a large percentage of that fair in any other world would be considered poor, but our city team takes pride and takes such good care of what we have regardless of how old it is. And so I just think it doesn't mean that because such a high percentage is fair, we should just say, oh, okay, that's great, we don't need to worry about it. I think it's still, there's a huge need for us to improve and make sure that we give the city the improvement that they need. Because that's something I've noticed, and no matter where I go tour, whether it's maintenance operation, I'm like, my gosh, this thing in any other business would be dead by now. But our city takes such good care of making sure it's nice and well kept, and the pride as if it was brand new. So that percentage kind of makes me go, oh, because I would say that in a different world, it may not be that high of a fair percentage.
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yeah, clarifying, my interpretation of the fair is not to say, hey, we should delay this. I think from my perspective, the big question is, we know that this is needed. It's a question of, can we afford it? Can our community afford it? And when can we afford it? And that creates a question of, how long can we bear a delay? And that's where I want to understand what fair looks like. Additionally, if we're going to continue to utilize that building after PD move out of it, if we're at the bottom end of fair in current state, and if we have the mechanical systems that will still need to be updated for the Justice Center utilization, that has a high expense, as just indicated, I want to be mindful of what are those costs going to look like in addition to the cost for a new facility. So it's trying to see a bigger picture and what different levers we have and where the pressures are. I think we already know there's pressure in the building. Like I said, I've done the tour, I've seen it. I do not need to be convinced that we need a new headquarters. But what I do need to make sure we answer is, can we afford all the projects that we have, not just for the new facility, but to maintain the existing and to make sure that we stand up everything appropriately? So I hope that helps.
Council, any more questions? That'll do it. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, our next presentation is the 2025 Housing and Urban Development Consolidation Annual Performance and Evaluation Report provided by Manager Davison, sorry.
It's okay, everybody does it. I'm used to it. It's okay. Good to see you all tonight. Thank you for giving me just a second to report on how we did during 2025. Let's see here. There we go. Okay. So for those of you who may not be aware, Councilmember Lott and maybe Councilmember Sturgis, every year HUD requires us to report how we performed with our consolidated block grant funds specifically. And that is this annual report. It's just, there's no resolution or approval needed. It's just reporting on what happened the last year. As you can see from the slide, the annual action plan and the CAPER is what we call it. They're staggered. The action plan is forward-looking. It lays out our goals and plans for the upcoming year. And the CAPER is the report up, the annual, how we did in the rear facing. The program year begins January 1st and it ends December 31st of every year. Historically, expenditures begin January 1st and then they're reimbursed by HUD in July or August. With the uncertainty and the delay in the federal funding and then the subsequent government shutdown, our spending was delayed by choice in advance of the uncertainty of receiving the money from HUD. We finally got our award in late October of 2025. The only thing that we reimbursed ourselves for was the administrative expenses that we had incurred at staffing. It's 20% of our annual grant from the period of January to October, which leaves us with about $480,000 of 2025 HUD funds that remain unspent. So just please know that as we look at these numbers going forward. Our goals in our consolidated plan, which run from 25 to 29, are affordable housing, community and economic development, and then addressing homelessness. Obviously, planning and administration isn't a goal, but it's listed because it's an expenditure item for the program. So in 2025, we supported citywide encampment cleanups and home repair. We did have some residual funding. The programs were already closed by January of 25, but we did have some residual spending. We gave some money to Solid Ground. We had some micro enterprise assistance, and then we completed paying out the sidewalk project from 2024, the 5th Street Sidewalk ADA compliant project. All of the goals for those expenditures, Solid Ground, sidewalk, micro enterprise assistance, those were all reported out in 23 and 24. So they're not included in this particular report. So the funding that was made available, and this report is citywide, and this is across multiple departments. This is an estimate. This is not an actual science. It's an estimate. We have some residual ARPA funds that we still have, about $1 million of, actually almost $2 million of ARPA funds. And then we have some opioid funding that we have not yet spent. CDBG, this was that 1.2 million encompassed some 22, 23, 24, and 25 funds that we had. Let's see here. So the total, as you can see, made available was 8.2 million. Of the $4 million in general funds, approximately 81% of that funded city-owned and operated programs, and those were programs across multiple departments. Like many other cities in South King County, Auburn takes a leading approach to funding and operating programs that deliver direct service to its residents, allowing our city to have a direct impact rather than a passive impact, like some of our surrounding cities do. A lot of those cities rely on nonprofit organizations and don't have direct service delivery to these low-income communities. Our next slide was our expenditures, what we actually spent. So there's our $116,000 of planning and administration. Affordable housing was $822,000. Community and economic development, $398,000. And I apologize, I left off the dollar amount under addressing homelessness. If you want to jot it down, it's approximately 3.5 million in addressing homeless. So homelessness, as you can see, is the largest area that the city put money in. And these investments include things like running the day and night shelter, the city's outreach team, utility discounts for low-income and senior citizens, operation and staffing of the senior center, the resource center, and that includes operational costs of the resource center, the veteran services, and the city's clean and sober housing program, and that's just to name a few. In affordable housing, those costs are things like the home repair program that's now city funded, not CDBG funded. Human services grants, $680,000 of grants that we give to partner organizations. Tax deferment for low-income properties, and the cost of operating SCIP. Under community and economic development, those are things like completion of the Fifth Street sidewalk project, part of the human services dollar grants that go to job training and education programs like Orion. So as you can see, the total expended investment in the community is $4.9 million. Our next slide, these are the demographics that we served across all the funding sources. Unfortunately, again, we saw this last year, the unknown category is 10 million people. Part of this is 10,000 people, thank you, Mayor. Part of this is because we fund HealthPoint. We fund HealthPoint with about $20,000 for 2 different programs. But when HealthPoint reports back to us, their reporting numbers are not tied to the amount of money we give them. So they report about 7,000 people that came into their facility right here in downtown Auburn, and they classify them as unknown Auburn residents. So they're a little bit of an outlier. It skews the numbers slightly, but this really is a good representation of the number of people that through funding sources the city of Auburn made contact with, people that are in need in our community that come for various kinds of assistance. These include all of our service providers that we fund with the $680,000 with our human services grants. So those, they do all report back. The resource center individuals that walk in the door, we don't collect demographic information on the individuals that walk in the door. The day center and night center also does not collect demographic information. They do collect ages, but specific demographics, they don't collect those from the individuals that walk in. So with this information, we report back basically the best we can. If you removed the unknown category, I wish we could reclassify those folks into other categories. The other largest category is 9,000 definitely known white individuals that live here in our city. Let me go to the demographic breakdown. And I apologize. It was a bad day when I was putting this together. Asian at the top should be 16%, not 1. So I'm afraid that's a typo. I apologize again. It's just a visual representation of the communities that we serve. There's a way to make that 77% more understandable. That would be amazing if we could do that. Again, here's another graphic that shows you population served by funding source. As you can see, the city makes the largest investment into our own community as opposed to other funding sources that we utilize. And then my last slide is population served by those goals that I showed you at the beginning. So economic and community development is the yellow. Again, that's the sidewalk projects. A little bit of the micro enterprise assistance and solid ground. Addressing homelessness is the blue category. Affordable housing is the largest category. And then we have admin, which is the 1%, $116,000 of CDBG funding. And then here's our overall accomplishments. I'd like to just address the gap between projected and actual when it comes to affordable housing. When we put these plans together for HUD, it's very difficult to determine who's going to walk in the door and how many people we're going to have. We can rely on past data, to tell us a ballpark of how many people are gonna come in. But we've had some large expenditures I will rephrase that. We've had some large tax increases by our government and with the reduction of SNAP benefits and increase in housing and the increase in utility rates and taxes. We saw a lot more people come in than we anticipated. Could the 300 people have been much higher? Yes, it could have been. Actually, and what we've seen is 32,000. So I apologize for the gap in those numbers, and promise you that next year we will try to get closer to actual. But I just at least wanted to address it. It is a large number between projected and actual. And I tried to simplify this as quickly and easily as I could to make it digestible. What questions do you have about the data I just shared?
Manager Davison, I have a quick question along the lines of the money that we provide to our regional partners. I struggle with us not holding a certain standard for that report back. Is there a way that we can, I would say, push that a little bit harder so we have that data so we can report correctly?
So as far as Health Point, let's speak about them because it's a large number that they provide us. I've had an in-depth discussion last funding cycle on this very topic with them. It skewed data last year. Their funding department, this is as I asked the same question and pushed, but I will do it again, I don't mind, about being closer to actual funding. What are we funding you and how many people are Auburn residents?
Just very vague.
What I was told by them is that they don't currently have a system that would actually separate out the number of patients that come in the door and tie it back to the amount of money that they get. I think that a workaround could be that they still have to produce a goal in their application packet. They still are required to do that. We just scale the number down to met goal. It removes the outlier. There is, with the system that they use, there's no real way that I understand for them to tie those two pieces of data together. So that we don't end up with such skewed numbers, if they've at least met their goal, we just list them. I can just list them at goal instead of having that outlier. It might make the data more meaningful to you and to me. So, but yes, thank you for the question. I did have a discussion with them about it.
I can feel that struggle for
They're
sure.
the only funder that does that. Everyone else ties their reporting to the money that we give them. If we reduce, so if their application is for $20,000 and we decide to give them 10 in the application process, then they will go back and modify their application and tie it down to 10, which is more realistic. It also tells us the cost per person, which is more meaningful than just having a large number.
Council, any questions? Councilmember Sturgis?
Thank you. On the last slide, the overall accomplishments by goal to actual, thank you for addressing the projected versus actual. Do you think the actual of 32,000, do you think that high number will continue in affordable housing, or is it more one-off based on the SNAP benefits, et cetera? Do you think obviously it'll be higher than 300, but where do you think going forward in your projections it would continue to go?
I'll bet you that slides down to between 15 and 20,000 people.
Okay.
I know that affordable housing is right there with food insecurity. You choose to pay your utilities or buy groceries. During the time that the SNAP benefits were shut off, our food bank did see a very large number of people come in the door for groceries. And then especially with a lot of individuals that are undocumented, we've had an increased number of those individuals in the food bank getting food as well. And so then when Debbie reported back the numbers to me, it made sense that the numbers that she was reporting compared to last year were a lot higher. Just knowing what's gone on, economically and all of the other things that we've been dealing with in 2025 and going into 26, it makes sense. The lines at the food bank still are high. They still have, compared to this time last year, they have a lot more people coming in asking for resources and food. I know housing repair increased their threshold for how much money they can spend on each house, which has also increased the number of individuals, mostly elderly seniors, who are also feeling the squeeze of increased utilities and grocery costs and now transportation costs, who can't repair their homes anymore. So I know that their numbers have increased as well. That also factors into affordable housing. So to justify, the numbers are, it is a large gap. To me, it makes sense why. I think we can do a better job with our projected numbers for 2026. I think we can.
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yeah, I think, and maybe that is just an area of clarifying when people would look at this data, what all's encompassed with the affordable housing, right? Because there's a lot more under that umbrella than it sounds like, just housing, like if that's including funding to the food bank and other things of that nature. Is there maybe a better way, or I don't know, if you could run us through again, what are all the things covered by that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because when we look at the 32,844, I mean, we're a city of 90,000, that's every third person, right? That's 30% of our community who's needing support right now. And so when I talked earlier about my concerns for our community being able to afford new projects, this is the type of thing that weighs on my mind as far as what stressors are out there when we are exploring things like, do we have to adjust our utility rates? Do we have to add increases in sales tax? Do we have to do things? Because seeing that number as our actual for last year, and I would predict that this year is going to be even more challenging for instability in households and in our community. Just top of mind. But if you would give me that quick overview real quick.
These are not an exhaustive list.
Okay.
So just so you know. Homelessness, these include the cost to run the day and night shelter. That also includes utilities, okay? The city's outreach team, which is staffing, vehicles, and obviously pay and benefits. Utility discounts for low-income seniors, so there's rebates and discounts that are given out to low-income seniors. Operational costs and staffing at the senior center. That also includes Min, who works there. She does outreach for seniors. She does the same thing our outreach team does. She just focuses on our older demographic. Then there is veteran services and our clean and sober housing program. Okay, all of those are funded through various funding sources. That's not all city funded, okay? Affordable housing include things like home repair, human services grants, tax deferments for low-income properties in the city, and the cost of SCIP, okay? Community development includes things like completion of the 5th Street sidewalk project from 2024 that bled over into 2025. Part of our human services dollars, part of those funds address all three: homelessness, affordable housing, and community development. Specifically in community development, I'm specifically thinking of Orion, job training and education programs, those kinds of things.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Council, any more questions? Councilmember Rakes.
Hi.
Hey, I have a question for you. On the home repair, have we upped the income at all? I know Puget Sound Energy had upped the income for the seniors to be able to qualify.
My understanding is that home repair follows HUD guidance.
Okay.
So if in 2026, and I have not specifically looked up this data, it's easy to find if you wanted to search for it, but every year HUD updates those income limits. They may not increase them, they may lower them, but they're changed every single year. And I know that home repair follows those income limits.
Okay.
So that I do know, I can assure you of that, but what that dollar amount is, did it go up or down, I cannot say.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it. Someone from the senior center had asked me that.
If they changed it? Yeah.
Council, any more questions? Councilmember Lott.
Yeah, I was I guess I was trying to get my head around, there's $822,000 spending in affordable housing that helped 32,800 and change people, almost 33,000. And that breaks out to be about $25 a person. So I was trying to,
Which slide are you on?
I'm looking
Which one are you
at
looking at?
two different slides. Slide 28, page 28, where it shows 800, yeah, that one. So there's 823,000 roughly there for affordable housing.
I would ask you, because I don't have the breakdown of that number right there, I would be more than happy to provide that to you afterwards if you would want to
Okay.
digest charts and
No,
data.
that's
I'm
fine.
happy to provide it to you. I apologize that I cannot. These charts are feeding off of a very large, very boring Excel sheet with a ton of data on it that I did not bring with me, but I would be happy to address that if you don't mind
Sure.
post-meeting, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Council, any more questions?
Thank you for your time.
All right. And now I'll turn the meeting over to Councilmember Baldwin. She's the Vice Chair of the Public Works and Community Development Special Focus Area to chair the rest of this meeting.
Next up, we have the capital project status update and our featured capital projects, which will cover Reservoir 2 for seismic control valve.
And I have Senior Project Engineer Jeff Bender and Project Engineer Alexi Koshman to give you that update.
Good evening, Chair, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Jeffrey Bender. I am going to be presenting on the capital project status report. And with me is Alexi Koshman, and he will be presenting to you tonight the feature project, which is the Reservoir 2 seismic control valve. To start looking at kind of an overall larger picture of the capital project, or capital project report. The start of this report can be found in your council packets on page 71. We currently, in the capital projects team, have 45 active capital projects with an approximate total project value of $149 million. 27 of those projects are currently in the design phase, and 19 of them are in the construction phase. And just as a reminder, the values shown here are project values over multiple funding years, not specific to this current year. So this here shows a very active program. It also highlights our continued commitment to maintaining and improving the critical infrastructure citywide. The next slide here is an example of a portion of the capital project status report. For transparency and accessibility, the capital project status report is available online, and it allows council and the public to look at the project status, look at the progress of the project, review some of the timelines that are anticipated, as well as the current project costs, and also would help stay informed with the recent project and future coming work within the community. We view this tool as a very important tool for accountability and communication for managing a program this size. And if council members haven't had an opportunity to visit the website, I would really encourage you to do so. There's a lot of valuable information on there for you guys to review. Next, I would like to highlight a few of our key projects that are currently in construction and are making strong progress. The first project probably is really no surprise to council. We have here for you is the 2414 Auburn Avenue Theater rebuild and the CP 2507 Theater Park Plaza project. These projects can be found in the council packet starting on page 73 and 71 respectively. They are two independent projects, but they were merged together and bid together at the same time under the same contract. This project was advertised for bids on February 5th, and we opened bids on the 19th of March. We are currently evaluating the bidders and determining which additives and alternatives that we want to award with that bid. We anticipate groundbreaking next month, April of 26, and anticipate a 14-month construction duration. And we are targeting a ribbon cutting ceremony in the third quarter of 2027. Next is the Auburn Way South Widening Project, CP 1622. This project can be found on page 77 of your council packet. It is located on Auburn Way South near the recently constructed roundabout and Chinook Elementary School. A vicinity map on the left side of the screen there gives a reference to where we're located. The project spans from Hemlock to the west through the roundabout and around the corner to just past Redwood Court. As a reminder, this project's goal was to widen the roadway from a 3-lane cross-section to a 5-lane, allowing for 2 lanes of travel in each direction with a 2-way left turn lane. It is installing 10-foot wide sidewalks on both sides of the road, plus illumination that meets the roadway and pedestrian needs. On the slide here, I have several photos of some of the progress that is made, showing the sidewalks that have been installed, as well as the street lighting and some of the retaining walls that we've had to build. The contractor has completed a significant portion of the west half of the project between Hemlock and the roundabout at the school entrance, including the curb gutter, sidewalk, and new street lighting. And currently they are focusing heavily on the east side of the project, on the south portion of the road, installing the curb gutter and sidewalk, as well as grading the new Poplar Road connection with this project. So we aligned Poplar to make the intersection easier for access in and out. Overall, this project is progressing steadily, and you can really start to see the corridor take shape. If you drive through there or have driven through there recently, the west half, the striping is in its final configuration for a temporary striping purpose. Once the final asphalt lift is put down, the permanent configuration, permanent striping will go down, but its configuration today is what we will see when it's completed. Next is the next is the C Street Southwest Preservation Project. This project can be found on page 72 of your council packet. It is on the southern end of C Street Southwest from the signal at what we call the GSA signal and extends all the way down to Ellingston Road at the city limits, the southern city limits there. This project includes grinding and overlay of the roadway from the signal down to Ellingston Road, ADA upgrades at the intersection, which includes pedestrian push-button improvements and replacement also of the vehicle detection system for the southbound direction. Currently, the contractor has been working on, as you can see on the slides in the photos on the slide here, the pork chop island at the intersection, putting in the new ramps and infrastructure for the ADA push buttons for the crossings. The next project I have tonight is the CP 2412 25 Local Street Preservation Project. This project can be found on page 73 of your council packet. As you can see on the vicinity map, it is located towards the south end of M Street, nearing 37th Street Southeast, and includes improvements along 33rd Street Southeast and O Street Southeast. The work on this project included full pavement restoration, ADA ramp upgrades, replacement of traffic calming features, and targeted sidewalk curb and gutter repairs where needed. In addition to all of the surface restoration that is done, important underground infrastructure went in. We replaced the aging water main in O Street, as well as all of the service connections. And we installed and extended the storm system to collect stormwater runoff that wasn't previously collected and pulled off the roadway. With this project, I'm happy to report that it is 95% complete. We are waiting for a little bit of dry weather that will allow us to install the speed cushions that are being placed on 33rd, as well as put any of the final channelization and striping on the asphalt surface. Okay. So, sorry. Overall, these projects do reflect our continued focus on both maintaining existing infrastructure and making targeted upgrades that improve safety, accessibility, and long-term performance. And I'd like to turn it over now to Alexi, who will share the status of this reservoir project.
Good evening. Today I'd like to introduce and discuss a little bit about the City of Auburn's Reservoir 2 seismic control valve project that we got going. The focus of this project is to improve the reliability by adding a seismic control valve, along with other improvements to help protect the water system during an earthquake. Just to kind of get you guys situated, it's kind of nearby Green River and the Lee Hill Road. More specifically, the project, as you can see from the vicinity map, is near the 105th Place Southeast. It's right next to the Amberview Apartments. Most of the work is going to be centered around Reservoir 2, as you guys may see. Next slide. Looking at the existing conditions, Reservoir 2 is a buried, pre-stressed concrete tank that is approximately 140 feet in diameter. It sits about 30 feet below the existing ground and holds about 3.6 million gallons of water. So it's one of our bigger ones. It was built in 1975 and currently has a basketball and tennis court on top. So it's kind of like a dual use. One thing that I'd wanted to mention is there's also a drain valve that is buried in the parking lot of the Amberview parking lot. Something to keep in mind. Next slide. So the purpose. The main purpose of this project is to protect our water supply during a seismic event, so an earthquake. As the graphic shows, without these improvements, a major earthquake could introduce the risk of a massive amount of water just flowing out or potentially flooding. When we look a little bit closer to this graphic, on the left, we can see the reservoir. And in normal conditions, the water just kind of flows in and out as it needs to. And what the seismic control valve is, it's a valve, but it also has a sensor that kind of senses. And in case of an earthquake, when the earth shakes, it lets the sensor know, and then the valve shuts. And so what we do is we shut the water off and we leave it at the reservoir. And then, we have our staff come in, see, make sure everything is fine and in proper order. And so at that point, we can remotely turn it back on and open the valve back again and have the water be used again normally. Ultimately, though, this upgrade improves our system's operations. It enhances our monitoring capabilities and ensures long-term reliability for the city. Next. To achieve this, we're making several project improvements. So as stated before, we are installing that seismic control valve that will automatically shut off flow during an earthquake. This will keep the water from draining out of the reservoir. To solve our current access issue to the drain valve that I stated in the parking lot of the Amberview Apartments, we are going to be installing a new drain valve at the Lee Hill booster pump station, and that's on the Lee Hill Road. Down below, modernize the SCADA integration. So we are going to be upgrading the SCADA control system, which means that the operators can safely reopen the valve remotely after the earthquake. And for system resiliency, we are going to be securing our emergency supply water. We're going to add emergency power redundancy, so we're going to add like a generator, a diesel power generator, and we're going to just overall upgrade our safety system at this reservoir. One thing I wanted to note quickly on the construction, building this improvement will require deep excavation. As stated earlier, this reservoir is about 30 feet deep, so we're going to have to dig down about 30 to 35 feet, which will require shoring. And since we're working next to this apartment, access and coordination with the apartment is going to be critical. We are planning to complete the major excavation during this upcoming summer. We want to make sure that weather's dry, so we can just kind of come in. And so we're focused on getting that done. Next slide.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, and then budget and schedule. The design phase is currently in progress, and it's cost us a little bit north of $500,000. And kind of moving forward to the construction phase, that's going to cost us approximately $3 million. For a grand total about $3.5 million to complete this project. This is being funded through a combination of sources. We got the FEMA grant, Washington State Military Department grant, and of course the city water funds will help out a bit as well. We anticipate the construction to run starting this summer, and we're going to be most likely be complete fall of 2027. Right now, we're looking at Q4 of 2027 to be complete with this project. Overall, this project strengthens the system, restores operational control, and helps protect critical infrastructure during an emergency here at the City of Auburn. So with that, I'd like to open up for any questions.
Council, do we have any questions on the capital projects or on the seismic valve replacement? Councilmember Sturgis.
Thank you. When you do the excavation, is it directly, will you have to tear up the basketball court, or is it off to the side where that grassy area is?
So it's going to be off to the side.
Okay,
And
so
so
that'll
that
still be
grassy
usable.
area, what we're going to do within that grassy area is we're going to put like a big vault. And so inside that vault, that's where we're going to have that seismic control valve. So the court shouldn't be touched.
Okay, so people will have access to that during the summer still, during construction?
I wouldn't want them to. We're gonna fence this thing off because there is gonna be about a 30-foot hole. Okay. So we want to keep people safe, and I think we'll probably ask them to kind of stay afar and not get into, because there's gonna be heavy.
Will the basketball courts be fenced off as well then?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Council, do we have any questions?
Thank you. So what kind of coordination are you gonna make with Amberview? Because this is a pretty lengthy project here, so what does that look like?
Well, we've been talking to Amberview currently. We've talked to the managers. We're currently working with procuring a permanent easement, a temporary easement, so looking at getting rights from them, and so working up the chain. So working with I believe we reached out to the secretary of the owners. That there's two owners there, and so we reached out to the secretary, and we're just trying to really do that coordination effort to get them first of all, like letting them know exactly what we're doing and asking them for some permission too, because there is going to be a little bit of work done at the parking lot below. I would say if we can, there's going to be a little bit of work needed to be done right here, which is going to be on their property, and we need permission to get on there, and that's going to be part of that temporary permit, or temporary easement. Over here, accessing this reservoir, we do have current easements, which were procured back in 1970s when this reservoir was constructed, but we'd like to get maybe a permitted easement right here on this access road. So in the future, if we have to do further improvements, we'll have that right of way secured.
Also further on that, to also clarify, during the design phase, we've had to do some exploratory work in the property itself, and we've had a lot of close coordination with the Amber View manager to do so. So they're well aware of the project and the extents.
Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you. So in terms of the residents, what does that look like? Any disruption for them, or what does that look like?
We don't foresee any disruptions for them. The way we're planning this project is the excavation and a lot of the pulling out the dirt. We're trying to go from the top, and that's how we're designing this project. So we're trying to minimize noise and disruptions for the residents. And I believe moving forward, once we get closer to construction, we'll have flyers. It's something, with more informational of what's going on that we're gonna provide to the management, and they're going to be the ones to kind of pass it out. And if they would like us to come out there or have our construction crews come out and kind of put the flyers on everybody's door, we're more than willing to do that as well.
Councilmember Sturgis.
Thank you. So just I guess clarifying, asking again, but differently is, Amber View, have they shared concerns that, I was raised in apartments, so I know how important, at least for me, the tennis courts and the basketball courts was my summer thing, is the only thing where I could play, and so I'm just curious on if that's closed all summer. But if the apartments are fine with it, then that's obviously a different case. So is that a concern, or have we, addressed that, or?
Yeah, with my interactions with management, that was not brought up. So that wasn't one of the concerns that they brought up to me.
Okay,
So.
cool. They know their residents, so.
I have just two quick questions. Help me understand the scale of 3.6 million gallon capacity. So
It's a lot.
that part I figured. Do we know how many households that would serve? So if we're talking about having the seismic valve control to protect the water supply, right? So it closes, we preserve the supply, we, reopen it when we're feeling like things are good to go. How many households would that potentially serve?
So I'm going to jump in there because I don't think that these are the right folks to ask that question of. That's a question more for the utility staff on what the facility serves, and they're not here tonight to answer that question. But what I can tell you is that overall, so this is 3.6 million gallons. I believe we have about 8 million gallons total in our reservoir storage across the city. So, and the reservoir storage is to serve all the needs of our city. So it's not just serving the houses in the area where the reservoir is, it's serving the whole system. So it's a significant portion of the amount of our reservoir storage that we have serving the city in total.
Thank you. The second piece of that, which they may also not be able to answer, so whoever can take a crack at it, is as part of the construction work and that replacement, do we have to empty that reservoir in order to make the change and then refill it? So does that work?
Yes, we're gonna have to empty it a couple times.
Okay.
And so that's gonna be first time, we're gonna empty it. Actually, we're gonna empty it a total of 3 times. The first time we're gonna empty it is so the pipes are about 35 feet deep. We're gonna dig down about 30 feet. We're gonna empty it, and then we're gonna hand dig more or less to find those pipes to make sure, because we wouldn't want to hit it and in that hole, the flooding. No, we're not doing that. So we're gonna empty it at that point. Once the pipes are located, we're gonna come in and we're gonna install that bolt, and we're gonna put we're gonna cut into the pipes, and we're gonna put a temporary spool. The water is gonna be filled up. The water reservoir is gonna be used as normal while we're waiting for the valves itself. There's about a 28 to 30 week long lead item. So once you order it and they submit submittals, and we verified that what the contractor is going to be ordering is something that's what we need. It takes about 28 to 30 weeks to be manufactured because of the size. What we're going to do in the meantime is we're going to be installing that vault. We're going to bring some dirt back and kind of get it all in place, kind of restore it. Then the second shutdown is going to happen where we're going to drain it. We're going to go into the vault. We're going to take out that spool, like the spacer, and then we're going to put the valve in. We're going to refill it, and then one more time is going to have to happen for the drain valve, which is on the Lee Hill booster station. So when we're going to be installing that, we're going to have to also drain it. But that's going to be in coordination with our water department.
Okay. And that was what I was getting to, is making sure that we don't have projects happening on any of our other reservoirs if we are indeed having phases where we end. But
Yeah,
it
and
sounds well
everything
planned.
for these construction projects is coordinated with our maintenance and operations staff and with our utility staff, so, yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Lott.
Yeah, I just had a question about these types of projects in general. If you get into this project and there's a timeline or scope or budget creep change, is there a variance report that's generated?
So I'm gonna jump in on that one. So so the way that we manage our projects overall, we typically bid them on a unit price base bid. And so if there are changes that are involved in that, then we go through a change order process with the contractor. And that could be a change related to delays in timeline that are in some way, shape, or form part of our fault, not just the contractor's fault, or it could be increased materials that are needed to complete the work. And so those go through a change order process. The way our code is written is we have a certain amount of authorized contingency that the council has granted through code for our project based upon the size of the project. And so we will do those change orders up to that authorized change order amount. If we need to go beyond that, then we come back to council and ask for additional contingency authorization for the project.
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to gauge what was originally planned and budgeted in timeline versus what, at the end of the day, the actual was. And it could come in less. You know, I'm just trying to measure more on the time side than the budget side.
Yeah, and I mean, so most of the projects are bid with a number of days for the work, which that time frame depends upon what's the weather conditions and what might be impacting that time frame. So we manage it by counting the working day process with them for whether or not we are getting it completed within the project time or not. And our contracts all have language in them related to liquidated damages for projects being done beyond the time frame that's allowed in the contract, again, unless we execute change orders to address changed conditions that exist in a project.
Council members, any other questions? All right. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you so much.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Councilmember Baldwin. All right, council, this is the section on the agenda where council can share topics of interest and/or reports on their special focus area matters. Reports should be limited to 5 minutes. We will start with Councilmember Ammer.
I have no report, thank you.
Councilmember Sturgis.
Just as a takeaway from tonight's meeting, I'll make sure that for our Community Services SFA that we have Candace and Chief Collier, share some of their thoughts and discussion around potential for the future of the court building, Justice building, because I know they're doing a lot of work in that space.
Councilmember Taylor.
No report.
Councilmember Lott.
I'll just say I had a meeting with the finance department and we discussed really financial reporting and the structures and what's in place in Auburn. And I'll say it was really helpful for me to understand how they're reporting. So that's all.
Fabulous. Councilmember Rakes.
I have no report today.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yeah, just a quick report out of some of the sessions I was able to attend at National League of Cities. On Sunday, March 15th, I attended the Human Development Federal Advocacy Committee. We discussed our work plan priorities for 2026, and we did have a special breakout session with public safety and crime prevention, where we were discussing the role of cities and what may be done with regards to resolution related to immigration enforcement and detention for advocacy there that our NLC lobbying groups can do on behalf of all of our 2,500 cities that are members of NLC. Also attended the First Tier Suburbs Committee meeting, which focused on how to drive infrastructure improvements as part of economic development opportunities. Specifically, as they were looking at how infrastructure improvements can support the redevelopment of aging commercial areas. Attended multiple general sessions, the Women in Municipal Government Luncheon, and an interesting session on simplifying federal grants, and some work that's happening there for communities being able to take more advantage of those by simplifying the language of how federal grants are operated. I think with the other attendees at NLC, we were able to meet with Senators Cantwell and Murray and hear from them, and generally had a very good, very active trip to DC. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Baldwin. I will give a quick shout out also NLC Transportation and Infrastructure Committee that I'm a part of. We worked on the Back to Basics bill, which is a bipartisan bill that continues to kind of make its progress through the Senate and whatnot. We're looking forward to meeting again here at the end of April to kind of discuss more on how we continue to tackle that. I do want to share something that I serve as the Sound Cities Association PIC alternate and on the Regional Transportation Committee. And it's something I'm going to bring Mayor into this conversation because she got to be a big part of the PIC conversation about the King County Transportation District, district, and King County Roads implementing or possibly implementing another sales tax upon cities. So Mayor can explain this since she is the PIC representative. Mayor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So at the PIC meeting, there was discussion. There were 32 of the 38 cities in attendance that night. And this is in regards to the King County Transportation District, as Deputy Mayor mentioned, which is in essence the King County Council. But because they can, it is a separate district. City of Auburn used to have our own transportation benefit district separate. Each council member was a member of that TBD, but we have since absorbed the TBD into the city of Auburn, so it's not two separate entities. King County has not done that, but they are in need of funding for roads in unincorporated King County. But their plan at this point in time is what they're discussing is a 0.1% sales tax on the entirety of King County. So in essence, what that means, 95% of the sales tax revenue comes from cities. 56.8% from Sound Cities Association, which is all cities in King County with the exception of Seattle. 39% of that comes from Seattle, and 4.2% of that sales tax would come from unincorporated King County. Unincorporated roads make up only 20% of the roads in King County. So the question that SCA has is, should an area with 11% of the population and 20% of the roads, generating roughly 5% of the tax, get 100% of the proceeds? SCA believes the answer to that is no. And we formed a policy that is requesting that if the King County Transportation District is going to move forward with that 0.1% sales tax throughout the county, that at least 25% of those funds raised be allocated back to the cities, and that the cities also have a voice in how that allocation occurs. As it stands right now, the King County Transportation District does not report back through the Regional Policy Committee or the Regional Transportation Committee. If they absorbed back into King County Council, they would be required to come through either RPC or RTC. So that's one of the questions that they are going to be discussing because they don't have an answer to that yet. So let me... this was the testimony, and I did send council, I sent each of you a copy of the testimony that Auburn provided, basically stating that we don't support the additional new tax. It is regressive. It also takes away from the opportunity of cities who have great needs of their own to be able to go out for a ballot measure if possible for additional funds. However, if the King County Transportation District does choose to move forward with this councilmanic form of tax, meaning it does not have to go out for a vote of the people. Councilmanic means that it can be voted on by the council, or in this case, the Transportation District members. That if that is going to be the case, that the cities do receive 25% of the allocation, and that the cities be involved in how that money would be allocated back out to the cities. And there will be another meeting. When is that next meeting? There could be a vote by April 17th, but some of the questions they want to understand. First of all, is there even enough support amongst the 9 to pass this sales tax? But also they want to understand the consequences of acting quickly or not, what cuts could happen to the King County Department, a clear list of county projects and priorities, what oversight is in place to make sure money is managed and spent well, and would King County Transportation District remain independent or be assumed into county government? And if it passes, will it include a pass-through for cities? It did not sound as if there was a great deal of support amongst the Transportation District members for providing a share of that funding. So there is still much more work to be done by the cities. There were 6 written testimonies. SCA provided comments. City of Auburn, Carnation, Des Moines, Duval, and Kent, along with 4 public comments that included SCA, Carnation, Kirkland, and Seattle. So more to come on that, but we are not in favor at this point of that additional tax when there would be no benefit whatsoever coming back to the cities when only 5% of the tax is generated in unincorporated and only 20% of the roads. While we realize that city residents do utilize unincorporated roads, there are more incorporated city roads. And for those of us who have annexed in parts of unincorporated King County in the past, we do not receive enough funding, and we are the ones responsible for bringing those roads up to city standards. So we just don't think that this is a fair and equitable process right now.
Thank you, Mary. With that, does anyone else have anything for the good of the order? No? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.